All right, welcome. Call to order. Lost my document. Council committee meeting on May 1st. Roll call shows all councilors are in attendance. Councilor Berthasol remotely. Everybody else in council chambers. We have two items, the Community Development Committee to start off with tonight. So let's begin with item A, discussion of the draft town council resolution for the University of Maine Systems graduate student unionization effort. And we have received a draft document produced by some counselors. So maybe I could ask them to begin.
Sure, I can jump in and say that I took a first stab at some draft language after speaking with constituent who was there last week, Harrison Goldspiel, and the conversation that we had. And then Dan Demerit helped refine that and sort of broaden the language to be certainly supportive of the graduate workers who are important members of our community, but also really calling on all parties involved in this negotiation to abide by a fair and expeditious process. And so I think that the revised language is really sort of strengthened the narrative, and that it walks a nice line of supporting important constituents and being hopefully quite tactful. So I'm feeling happy with it, and I'm curious if Councillor Demerit wants to weigh in and say anything else about the process.
Sure. Sure. Thank you. For me, it started as a place where I wanted to the extent that for me, it comes down to kind of standing and certainty. You know, when an institution speaks about things, I think it's important that it's careful not to accept as facts things that it can't verify, or it doesn't have. It's not the holder of the information, and to be careful about instructing other institutions to take actions. And so I felt like if this had been not to point out, say the Department of Transportation had a policy that was going to make us roll up our sidewalks, and I feel like we would have standing and certainty and be able to come out much more forcefully with a declared, this is not a good idea for the Department of Transportation to make us roll up our sidewalks. I feel like we had an opportunity to hear from graduate students who've been a part of this process, and there are things that we could verify about. We could appropriately talk about the value of the graduate students in our community, the importance they have to the university, while also being respectful to the role that the university leadership has to play in this kind of process, but also acknowledging that it's a hard meetings were taking place, and it's running up against challenges of a multi-campus system where graduate students were all over the place and those kinds of things. So I found and I appreciated the opportunity to work with Councilor Berthasol to come up with something we both felt comfortable with, and I'm happy we got an email from someone who had some concerns about it today, and I heard that as well. And I take that I didn't think our draft was siding too much on one side in terms of grievances, but I welcome anyone suggested that it goes too far in that regard. So
Anybody else?
I hadn't seen.
Oh, I can go. I am a past graduate student. I have a master's degree and I have a doctoral degree, both from the University of Maine. I understand the income issue. I get that. But I also know that your tuition is paid for, fully paid for. And so I have a little bit of a problem with it, but I also understand how unions work, and I know that, that they are good things, or they can be. I don't support this resolution because I don't believe that it's in the purview of the town of Orono. I have to agree with our email person today. And I was going to say this tonight anyway. I think that we should not be involved in university business. I can't wait for us as a council to get back to town business. And I'm interested in, seeing that they are compensated for the work that they do, because certainly it is rough. I also know that, it's 2 years of your life. And I don't think that the town of Orono should be involved in university business. I think we can support our graduate students in other ways. And so I am not going to support a resolution like this. I don't think it's in the purview. I don't think it's what we are elected to do. I think we're here for policy and operations, and this goes beyond our reach. That's my thoughts. So thank you.
I will weigh in again. That was pretty much obviously my sentiment at the last meeting. I am a little disappointed that we've spent over an hour on this, where I don't feel it's under our purview. Jeff had mentioned that this would obviously be unprecedented. And I agree. And I guess if council members are seriously considering this, I guess I'd like to know where we would draw the line on such an effort. So if we have exactly one Pat's Pizza employee that reaches out to us, would we send a proclamation to Bruce Farnsworth or OBC, or where is the line there on where we're going to involve ourselves in matters that don't pertain to the town? There's so many examples. If we heard from people doing medical rotations, everything, I don't know anything about it, but I heard they grind them into the ground. Very poor work environment. Are we going to send a letter to Northern Lights? I just think this sets a very bad precedence that we should absolutely avoid. Same as I felt last week when we spoke about it, but I would like to hear from those that are, in favor of getting involved in this business, where if they have an idea, where is the line? Who would we send these to, and who would we not send these to?
I mean, I read this and I am in support of it. Graduate students make up a significant portion of our population, and I think there is a difference between a majority of graduate students at the university wanting to get ahead with this process and increase the quality of life for themselves and others coming after them in our town. I think there's a difference between that and, say, a single employee of a small business in town asking for support in some way.
What would you say those differences are, Rob, if I could interrupt? Sorry.
Well, I would say
how is it
the quantity of people is a major factor, I think. And also, I think maybe the fact that but I guess that's the main factor there in response to that point. I am also curious to hear from Harrison, who happens to be here today, how the meeting that you told us was going to be happening last Monday went, and what the status is of this process. But I don't think that this is, as I said last week, outside of our purview. I think we have a responsibility to our constituents, including people here, to support them. And I don't think that this is unduly interfering. This is voicing support for some people in our community. This is not even calling out the University of Maine system for doing anything, because that's not what we're saying, or not doing anything. That's not what we're saying. I think we were resolving to be in support of some of our constituents.
So what would happen, Rob, if we didn't have a resolution? Would they still go through with their negotiations? And does the University of Maine personnel and the University of Maine system trustees, board of trustees, do they have the wherewithal to negotiate this with their students without us?
I mean, probably. That negotiations don't require us to speak up,
Exactly.
but I don't think that means that we shouldn't. When you believe something is right.
I don't think that that's our town business. I don't think that we should be meddling in the University of Maine business.
And
I think the University of Maine has professionals on board that have done this before. There's plenty of unions. PAFTA is up there. There's all kinds of unions on campus. And the University of Maine knows how to negotiate with them, just like our town manager did. Resolutions, the Juneteenth resolution and the resolutions that we use and that we support our community as a whole. As a whole, when we pass resolutions, we don't pick out little portions of the population to support them. We are a town council. And so I feel like Leo said, when you start going, we're going to support this group or that group or this group with these resolutions, we will be doing resolutions all the time. So, how do you draw the line? And, where are we as a town? Not population, town.
So I think to structure our discussion tonight, we will have an opportunity as a council to vote on whether or not to make a resolution. That's not really, we don't vote in committee, so that's not what we're doing tonight.
Right.
Tonight, our job is to offer feedback to the authors of this draft. If they have feedback that would encourage them to improve it in our eyes in any way, they can then take that feedback, make changes to the draft as they see fit. We'll take up the draft. We could take up passage of the draft at a regular council meeting, right? So in terms of language or wordsmithing, irrespective of whether we believe the resolution is appropriate or not, right? So that's our job tonight. So I would say, like, in that vein, and I'll say this again, I support the right of graduate students to unionize. I'm somewhat tepid on the process that we're going through now. But I would say if this were a document that the council were going to resolve, right? For me, I would want to see those things that apply directly to Orono kept in, and those things that are more general, such as, okay, where it says, where is the well-being of and belonging for graduate students is important to the Orono community. I think that is absolutely true. Where it says, there's one, whereas tens of thousands of graduate students have earned formal union recognition at dozens of public and private universities in the United States. That, to me, does not have a direct link to the community in Orono. That is true. There's nothing false in there, but it doesn't rise to the level of an Orono proclamation for me. So I would ask anybody who's working on this draft to think about what are the Orono-centric pieces in here. And that's the only comment that I have. I think we'll need to see where a vote goes after that if there are changes to the language.
It's a really valuable way to put that and to focus the discussion. Appreciate that.
I guess I'm maybe the only person who hasn't spoken. I just want to say that I'm fine with the language as is, although I don't have a problem if we wanted to make that kind of change that Jeff suggested. I guess I'm not supposed to say, I'm in favor of the resolution, and I do think that government bodies talking to each other is different than getting involved in private employers. And I do think it's a large number of people in our community. So those are the only things that I guess I would say. Thank you.
Do either of you have, I have no idea what number of graduate students are in our community. I think you mentioned 600 or 700 system wide. I don't know. I have no idea how many live in Orono. Do we?
If you have,
If you have that.
yeah, if you have the information, Harrison, please.
By the official counts on the University of Maine's website, as of like the last academic year, there are somewhere around 2,400 graduate students in the whole UMaine system. And by our count that we've spent over a year working on, we think that there are potentially about 1,000 graduate workers. And of those, at around 90% might be at the University of Maine in Orono. And I would say probably more than half of that amount actually live in the town of Orono. And I don't know exactly what the population of Orono is, but 500 to 600 people is a large percentage of people to consider as constituents.
Do graduates live on campus too?
Very few. Very few. Some do. There's one residence hall that is for graduate students and international students. But besides that, a few live in the University Park housing, which I believe is in Orono. But most are off campus in apartments and houses in Orono. Most in Orono.
So,
I think that also the university is one of the largest employers in our area, which I think is different. And also I would say that it's not unprecedented that different governmental bodies have, sent these to each other. The school has sent us one as a town. I remember it coming recently about the marijuana establishments, right? So I do think it affects us as a town when a significant number of people are living at wages below a living wage.
Sure.
I guess.
my question was, I'm really more about policy and operations and what we do as a council in our job. That's where I'm at, because I think that graduate students definitely need to make more money. But my question is, and this might be a question for Sophie, is do Maine state labor laws cover public universities? Because we are not, it's not a private, it's not Yale and Cornell and all of Columbia. It's a public university.
So I am an expert in public universities. I will tell you that what we learned last week is that they are not public employees as defined by
Right.
state law, which tells me that I know probably almost nothing about.
Okay.
Our contacts that we've worked with the United Auto Workers have done the homework a long time ago to verify that we are eligible for unionization
Okay.
under Maine law.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was my question.
Any other discussion about the language of the text?
Just a big thank you to Dan and Sonia for all their effort. Thank you both.
Sure. And I'm happy to wordsmith a little bit with an intention toward making it more clearly Orono centric, since that's some feedback that I heard. And certainly Councillor Demerit, if you'd like to join me in that, you'd be very welcome, or anyone else who'd like to pitch in.
If I can, just around the format, we'll take as many words as you need and roll into a second page. It would be preferential if we could keep it to one page in terms of our recording. So if there would be ways that you could smush whereases together and reduce the space on the page, that would just by like.
Sanskrit too, or do you have any other?
Well, has to be readable, but and again, that shouldn't be the highest priority, but if it's possible, that Nancy would greatly appreciate that.
Thank you, Nancy.
That's helpful feedback as well. Thanks, Sophie.
I know that, I think you were not wrong to ask that we sort of center the discussion around the language here, but I would also still like to ask Harrison to give us an update about sort of where this process is at, just for us to understand sort of what the impact would be and full scope of what we're proposing that we're doing here. Yeah.
I guess I would ask that we maybe get an update from the meeting that was taking place at our last meeting. Aside from that, I'd rather not devote, another 40-minute meeting to
Yeah,
that.
I think that's fair. So if we're done, if we're wrapped up with our discussion of text, maybe Harrison, if you don't mind grabbing a seat at the table and giving us the 5-minute summary of what happened at the last meeting. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. There's not a lot to really update on because the meeting that we thought that was scheduled for 3 hours long was only 20 to 30 minutes long. And it was a very positive meeting. Essentially, we asked the administration if they will agree to move forward with a recognition process through a card check with the labor board. And they said yes. And we asked them if we can send them a proposal of kind of how that process would go, what the timetable would be, and the definition of the unit for the graduate workers and who would be eligible. They said yes. And so we put that together. That might be sent out already, if not in the next few days. And so in the next few weeks, probably, we'll be sending along our cards to the labor board, assuming that everything goes smoothly, but the university administration was very agreeable and positive and seemed to want to work with us in a very healthy fashion.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Sounds good.
Appreciate it.
All right, thank you for the update.
So before we leave, can I just get some guidance
Yeah.
here? So this is going to be on the agenda as my assumption for May 8th. If I could have revised language by Wednesday afternoon, that would be really helpful. We're finalizing the agenda Thursday, so that would be helpful. And then my assumption is I'll just format it.
Thank you. Okay. Moving on to item B, Town Council observance of Juneteenth. This is our request from a counselor to add Juneteenth to the Town Council's list of holidays observed for town planning purposes. And I think we had a discussion about moving the meeting this month so that we would not have a.
So let me see if I can frame it just
Yeah.
a little bit. The town has a list of holidays which are defined by ordinance and are days that the town is closed for operations. We also, at the bottom of that list that counselors often see is the list of, we call it right now, important religious holidays. I don't know that Juneteenth is religious, so you might want to change that to important holidays. We normally look at that each July after the budget is done and as we look for the next fiscal year to adopt that. Usually we do it in July and then again in December because sometimes things change. The request was that we just pop it on there. We normally wouldn't just pop it on there. Normally there would be at least some discussion, which is why it's here. Then also the request came that Juneteenth, the regional Juneteenth celebration is going to be in Ellsworth, and a concern that it would conflict with what is here because we would be scheduled to meet from 5 to 6:30 or 7. And the thought being that people wouldn't be able to get back by 6:30. So yet another thing that has absolutely not my area of decision making. So the two things that came forward were putting that on the list of holidays. Do we want to do that off cycle? Do we want to just make a decision for this year? And do we want to make a decision to either not meet or to meet at 6:30? Is that?
Yes, I think so, yeah.
I mean, I was the counselor who brought it
Yeah.
up, so maybe I can just say that I brought it up because we're about to be asked to sign proclamations, and I feel when I sign a proclamation, I want to feel like we're acting what we're saying and not just saying something and not doing the actions that would show our respect for that holiday. So that's why I brought it forward now, not because I was trying to disrupt the cycle of when we normally vote on it. I am involved in some of the planning for the Ellsworth event, and I know that it's been very clearly expressed by folks on that committee and by the Black leaders planning that celebration, how important it is that the actual day be recognized and that the day itself and the date being very, very important. So I just wanted to bring that to council.
I have no problem postponing and or canceling depending on what we've got on our agenda. So on that day.
From what we have on the agenda and planning, I would recommend that if you can't meet on the 19th, that you just don't meet and that we move things into July.
Can we meet later on the 19th or does that not work for people?
Oh, you could meet at 6:30 if that works for your schedule, but I wouldn't.
The event ends in Ellsworth at 6. It's from 2 to 6.
When will we?
You
meet?
couldn't get back here by
June
6:30.
19th, that'll be near the end of wrapping up budget or no?
So, well, that brings up a good point. I think the one thing that we would normally do on the 19th is on the 12th, you'll take public comment on the budget. The 19th would be the last time that you would have to change things around because unlike other orders, it's really hard to unravel the budget orders to make a change on the fly or on the floor for those orders. So normally we would get together the following week to make sure that there weren't changes you wanted in the orders. So, I mean, you could kind of play it by ear and see what happens on the 12th and then look at the calendar.
Do
or-
we not have a budget workshop that week, Wednesday or anything?
No, so the budget hearing. So the budget hearing is June 12th. So that's when everything should be wrapped up and given to residents to comment on.
But based on resident comments, there might be changes that need to happen is what.
That's totally up to council.
Right. And is it possible to meet on a day that's not the 19th of that week for people?
I have no idea. It's summer. I have my Mondays party.
Yeah, that would be fine with me, and I think would be my preference. I'd love to, sort of honor June 19th by taking it as a real holiday if we're able to, and I'd be willing to attend a Wednesday meeting or another meeting that week if that facilitated that and worked for others as well.
Sophie, are there other town meetings scheduled that week?
So
already
we
that
have
would conflict?
planning board on Wednesday, so that's not a day that would work.
Tuesday?
Tuesday?
Tuesday, the 20th should work.
At 5.
Want to just move it to 5?
That'd be fine.
And Sophie, is that an as needed or as wanted?
Thursday, we
Meeting?
Here, I mean, I guess,
No, wait for a second.
this is where it's a philosophical that people may or may not agree with now, but you put a budget out there for the public to comment on. It would seem to me that it would make sense for us to come together, even if we only got Paul and Frederica to show up and give input. So for a long time, it used to be the public hearing happened on one Monday and the following Monday we turn around and approve the budget. And that just didn't seem to honor the public hearing, which is why we changed.
Okay, so we'll.
Yeah, I really like the idea that we have some deliberative time together. So on the 20th, and then we will sort of, are you okay, Sarah, with us continuing our regular schedule of looking at our official holidays in
Yeah.
July? Can we do
Yeah,
that? Okay,
absolutely.
so
I
we'll
just
do that.
wanted to bring it to attention and flag it that we didn't
Yeah.
have it there.
And would it make sense if this is important to council for us to also schedule for sometime in the earlier part of FY 24 to talk about Juneteenth as a town holiday?
Sure.
It's worth the conversation.
Hmm?
It's worth the conversation. Yes. Thank you.
It's not a town holiday now.
And Sophie, are our current town holidays, do they exactly, the ones we currently have, do they exactly match the state or federal holidays, or are they ones we have specifically chosen for Orono?
So they might line up right now, from a state holiday perspective. We are not exactly spot on with them. We have 2 collective bargaining units that bargain holidays. We have a town ununionized group that we can decide what to do. And we now have a status quo group. So I don't know, and I know I don't have any budget right now to pay for Juneteenth day off for this year.
Okay, but the holidays we currently have are just our choice. We haven't made a policy that it matches the state or the federal or something else. That was my question. Thank you.
All right. Any other discussion on Juneteenth, on the observance of Juneteenth, or on the proclamation? Okay. Moving along, Finance and Operations Committee draft FY 24 municipal budget overview.
I will tell you, I didn't think I was gonna have any of this time. I thought for sure. Yeah, so I wanted to take a few minutes and just give a very brief overview. Town council received a budget workbook. If you haven't picked it up yet, there is, I'm gonna guess Nancy's already taking care of distributing it to, yep. So counselors have that budget workbook and it is online and available for the public to see exactly what council sees in that notebook.
This is not in our budget folder though, correct?
No, but you can go right online and look at the very same things. The
Could we slide it in the folder just for sake of, I can't go online, I don't know. It is nice to have one spot, because I didn't go to the website.
all right,
to see.
I can do that for you, Leo.
What are you
Maintenance.
looking for?
Just that the electronic version gets into our folder.
Oh,
Just keeping all budget things in one
Yeah.
spot for looking back
Yeah.
later. Okay,
I
I
get
get it. That makes sense.
Too many windows open.
So,
Three screens.
just briefly, for council, we have a few extra things that you asked for. As you can see, it takes more paper. What I'm passing out now is we had agreed a while ago that I would go back. I think everybody said 3 years it's either 3 or 5 of employee wages. Sonia, I'll slide this one into your notebook.
That would be wonderful. I was just going to ask if you could save me copies of any paper handouts from today, because I'd love to make sure I get everything.
So I want to just talk with you briefly about the methodology here, because we had to pick a period of time. We did not do W-2s. These are base wages, so it's assuming everybody worked what their base schedule was. We picked a date on the calendar. Zach ran individual reports for each year. Here are our regularly scheduled, not per diem people. And we multiplied what their hourly rate times their scheduled base wage was, and had they worked the whole year at that. So there's methodology. If you're looking for something different, you need to tell me what it is, and I can do that. I also, there are notes on the side. We went back to 2018. So you have 2018 through 2022. The method of the madness with that is that takes us back to the single chart of accounts and on the ADP payroll system. So it's easier for us to do. At the bottom of, whoops, we did not do it. I will get you there. I have a, oh, never mind. It is right. So that is what you've asked for. If there's follow-up to that, please let me know. We also are working right now on a document that's going back through each of the budget years for what budgeted positions, how many budgeted positions in each department we have. That's taking a little bit longer because that's a manual process. But I hope to have that on Wednesday.
Is it gonna be different than the one you gave us last year?
Yep. Yes, because last year we did it off the ADP system and who got paid. And if you notice, that's a little bit different than budget to budget. So that's why we're weeding through manually what budgeted positions we had each year. I took it from Brewer. Brewer has a system that I liked, and we're going to use that system.
The difference being there was a budgeted position versus what we have is who got paid. Is that what you just said?
So there are a variety of reasons why our employee count from a payroll system of active may or may not be correct. How they got terminated in the system in 18 and 19 creates an issue. How we are classifying them home department versus not home department. So we're going through. You notice you all got a chart of accounts that tells you how many people we have budgeted in 23 as we sit right now. We're taking that same methodology and moving it back over time.
Going all the way back, like 5-year increments back to 2000 again?
We're going back to 2013 on that one.
And so Sophie, what we'll get eventually will tell us each department FTEs 2013, 14, 15, 16, basically.
Yep, and then what you'll have is not really a footnote, but a footnote that would then go to, people wanted to know why we made changes. So that will be a narrative that goes with it.
Terrific. That's perfect.
The other thing that got added to the system, we didn't put it with your material because there are links, and trying to click a link on a piece of paper doesn't work. But if you look in your shared drive, there is a town, there are two folders in there now. One is called inventory, I believe. Let me go back and look. And one, so you have a new folder called FY 24 budget documents. This is where I will add Leo's.
Yeah.
Thoughts. I'm having a little butterfingers here. Give me a second. So, when we look at this. Oh, Belle says she already put them there.
The town council shared drive.
Yep, town council shared drive,
Okay, perfect.
Is this the-
FY 24. Well, I don't see them.
is it in the historical budget?
Let's hope.
Is that where you
Here
know?
she comes.
Town Council Shared Drive, 2023 Council Packets, FY 24 Budget Documents. Council Budget
It
Documents,
shouldn't,
not in the public folder.
but
2024.
it shouldn't be in the packets. It should be a separate folder. I already
Just trying
started
to
it.
Keep it where Leo goes to look for documents.
Leo can go to FY 24, I'm sure.
So what you've got when you open the FY Town Council Shared Drive, FY 24 budget documents.
Yeah,
If you click on, there's a vehicle and equipment inventory for FY 24 budget process. You click on that. It lists out every vehicle, every piece of equipment, meaning mobile equipment or significant equipment, and every trailer. And if you really want to get the full experience, each one of those has a link to a picture. I will send you the
Oh,
document.
wow. Photos, look at that.
So that you can see them,
Thank you.
okay?
I said it's a cherry red plow truck, not a red. van. It's fantastic.
I'm looking in the wrong place, Sophie. I'm sorry.
Okay. If you go to the Town Council Shared Drive
I'm there.
and you look, you see the 2022 council packet, 23 council packet, building assessment information, comp
Yep.
plan. Under it, 24.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
budget documents.
Yep.
Okay, I found it too.
Perfect. Thank you.
So, oh, and Belle just put. I'll make a folder for that. Just put all of your packet in there too. So the 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 are your sections in your book. Then if you look at the folder that talks about historical budget and expenditure reports. I got a request to to make a report that had historical information. The request was to go back further. Our software only lets me do comparisons for 3 years, so it will only go back 3 years. I didn't know what you wanted, and there are lots of different ways I can run reports. So given that I have limited number of columns for those reports,
We on historical budget.
Yeah, this looks great. And historical, yeah. Are you in there?
so when we look at that, I have a limited number of columns. So I've run that report where it shows budget and actual for 20, 21, 22, 23, and then I ran out of space.
Mhm.
Then I ran the report that had expense only for 20, budget and actual for 21, 22, 23, and the request for 24. Then I ran you essentially the mirror to what you have as your summary sheets, which is expense for 3 years, the current year budget, the current year expense to date, and then the comparison, the request for 24 and how that lines up with difference between 23 and 24 dollars and percentage. But then one of the issues we have when you start looking at actuals is, for example, our grant fund, a lot of that, almost all of it is budget adjustments. This is one of the first years that we're actually building a budget in the grant fund because we have the safer fund. Most of the time, we don't book a grant until we know we have received it and we know we're going to expend funds. When we get to the end of this year, we have to finalize the grant fund, and then we reappropriate the money. It rolls into next year, and there's an article on order that you will approve that does that. So adjusting entries, budget entries, and carry forwards are things that will majorly change the budget throughout the year. So in each of these, I have also run it with carry forwards and adjustments and without. That's why you have so many. If you want to tell me exactly what you want, I can clear out the clutter for you, but
I think this is good, Sophie.
I think this is great.
This is
Thank you.
great. Yeah.
I do have a question because I haven't opened them all yet, so maybe it's here and you said that, and I was frantically trying to figure out what I'm looking at here, but if you open up just, I guess, any one of these custom budget report, historical budget expenditures, fiscal year 20, fiscal year 24, no adjustments or carry forwards, reported object level, you know, that can you find, you know, that PDF? It starts off general government finance, wages, benefits, travel, blah, 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 and it goes through all of them.
They're time stamped on the left, Leo. What's the time stamp on the one you're looking at?
so there are, at the end, you'll see ones that are reported at the object level and ones that are reported at the division level. Division is where they roll up.
Is there a summary of just the roll up of the division level? I think if I'm talking your language for each one. So a 1 page of all divisions
So it's-
summarized, and then so you could look and see the summary, the totals for each, and then you could drill down into this if you had questions.
So if you look at historical budget expenditures, FY 20 expense only through FY 24, no adjustments or carry forwards reported at the division level will get you, I think, what you're looking for. It's a 9-page report as opposed to a 53-page report.
This is the first one, the custom budget report.
They're all custom budget reports. Trio doesn't let me change that.
Okay, what's the timestamp in the top left on the one you're looking at?
Let me open it. I hadn't even got there.
They have like.
906.
All right, I'll find the 906 one. Thank you. And I'll know what we're looking at.
This will give you a sense of what I can report, and to run one of these is not a big deal, especially if you want it PDF. So just tell me what you're looking for and we can pop new ones in. Does that sound like a plan?
Yeah, this looks really good.
Trio is not the most easy to use. but-
I'm in 906. What page were you talking about, Sophie? Within this one?
So within this one, that's reported at the division level.
Yeah.
So that means
Community development, public safety, public
Division
works.
level?
Yeah.
the
it's by
division level is the level to which council is approving budgets.
Correct. Yeah, very good. Sophie, go ahead. I do have one question that kind of relates to what you're explaining here. Just when I was looking at our budget info on paper, when we're looking at the comparison from FY 22 to 23 to FY 24 proposed budget, and we see the percent change column down the side. The only thing I'm not clear is which FY 23 budget are you comparing to? The original approved one or the actual one that happened, which I know we're not fully through yet, but actual to date?
So I am comparing that to budget, 23 approved budget to 24 proposed budget.
Okay.
Any adjustments made in a budget are using funds other than those that are raised from taxes and often are one-off reasons, which is why we've always done the original approved to initial proposed in that line. The other reason is there are financial people that would go absolutely aghast if my original budget didn't tie to my tax commitment.
It was my assumption, but I just wanted to clarify that that is in fact what those are comparing to.
And we can run other budget, we can run the adjusted one. Well, you have it now.
Oh, that's in here.
Yeah.
Right. So, thank you.
Mr. Question.
Oh, I know, this is so lovely. This is really great, Sophie. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Very
because
helpful,
it's,
answered all the
great.
questions.
All right, so I will tell you that the budget summary probably could have been another 10 pages, which then probably wouldn't have made it really summary. But I tried something different this year, and that is to report on the whole budget. In the past, we really focused almost entirely on the general fund budget. So that budget, which is derived from tax dollars. And then we kind of pick up the other pieces as we go through the process. This year, I've tried to show you the entire $20 million budget, which includes our governmental general fund operations and a placeholder for overlay, our capital and capital investments. That's and then our tax increment financing dollars, which is technically fund balance. Those are restricted tax dollars that come in. The reserve fund allocation. So in the past, you've only seen these as part of the capital budget. We're actually breaking them out into trio to show you which elements would be paid for out of existing fund balance. The hazmat fund, which is a special revenue fund, you can do whatever you want there. If you increase the budget, you would have to raise those funds from somewhere else. But those come from outside entities to support that.
Sophie, what page, what are you looking at? Where, you're not talking about this summary.
Notes.
It's
telling us
page 3.
additional stuff.
I'm trying to capture the change for people who may have gone through this process before. And if you'd like me to just stop and let my letter speak for itself, I'm happy to stop.
No, I thought you were talking about the actual, the summary.
No, I guess the point is that I think there have been questions about how we focused on a $12 or $13 million commitment when it's really a 20 to 20. By the time we get done the end of the year, we usually get close to $23 million budget. So I tried to show that this year. That's very hard to show with all the different funds in only 20 pages. So I expect there to be confusion. And if you can give me feedback, you don't have to do it on camera. You can just give me feedback about how we can tweak it for future years. I'm happy to do that. Overall, I think the piece that is most important is the other shift that we've made is in the past, I've really whittled down what requests go in the budget and have given you in the narratives places that you might want to add things in. I have not done that this year. This year, I have put what we think are important things for you to talk about. And as we go through that process with department heads, you can determine whether or not they meet your priority. Overall, the current budget would seek a $209,000 increase in general fund taxes for municipal. So
What's that? Sorry.
$209,000 increase for municipal government. If you look in your summary, it will tell you For total for taxes, we've got an increase of 209 for the town.
Yep.
An increase of approximately 450 for the school. And an increase of 23,052 for the county. So the county is the only part of that equation that is finalized. That budget was finalized in December and that tax has been assessed. The school is going through its own process. You guys are actually going to sign warrants when you have your budget workshop next week. That process, I understand they have a final number. This is just based on conversations with Meredith. I don't have a firm final number. I just have an approximate. And our process is just beginning. Right. So one of the things we're working on this year is for staff to not say as much as we have in previous years. So I guess I turn it over for questions or concerns if people have had a chance to look through the summary or
I
if,
just have a process question. If we sign a warrant that commits us to a proposed budget, or proposed bill from the RSU, and that gets modified through the referendum process or their approval process, how does that change our process?
so the warrant you signed is actually calling an election. Because as municipal officers, you're the only ones that can call a municipal election and determine the polling location for that election. When we go through our process, all the way to the end, the order that you sign, that you approve at the very end of the process on June 26th is to pay the school bill. And depending upon where we are in that process, most years it's pretty cut and dry. By that point, it's been approved by voters and it's a definite number. But there have been years when the state is still kind of monkeying around with school aid to education, and which we put an estimate down. The council does not have a choice on what it pays for the school bill. The school sends us a formal assessment document that goes to our assessor and goes on the tax commitment. So even if we had it wildly wrong, we would commit the taxes that are required to pay the bill.
I was just asking about the process, like when in our process are we interacting with that other number? But that's fine. Thank you.
So you'll go to your public hearing with an estimate that will go to referendum on the day after your public hearing.
Yeah.
Wow, and thank you to a ton of information. That was my long list that I was literally, I just saw the vehicle one today, so I'm like, okay, scratch that off and I'll pass that. And I think you hit every other one, so I appreciate all of the work that did go into that. And I do want to say also, I read your narrative this year. Normally I skip the word part and I just go to the numbers. So I'm getting better. And I do my general overview feedback that I wanted to share, I guess, more so with maybe the council. But as your narrative shared, we've been fortunate or lucky, however you want to call it, and we've gotten more money from the state every year. I think it looks like about 2019, maybe we got 700,000. We're projecting 4.6 million from the state, which is awesome. My issue or concern is that I don't think that has ever materialized in taxes being level or cut either. I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, it may have between.
So Leo, I'm not disagreeing with where you're kind of going at the end of the day. I am going to disagree with the blanket statement because there have been a couple of years that we've come in at, the municipality has come in at minus because of revenue sharing. That was former councillor Tom Perry was hawkish on that. And
Has that been recent years? Because
Yeah.
I haven't honestly followed it close enough to know, so I wasn't sure.
the first year that we saw a big jump in revenue sharing, I think you'll see a corresponding offset of like 400,000 in tax relief. Now, whether or not that went all the way down through to the end of commitment, I can't
Right,
tell
as long
you.
as it showed up on our line, our
Yep.
ask, that's the first piece.
What year are we looking at for that? So I look back, you know,
It's
ish.
like 2019 or 2020.
2020.
I
when there's a
think
bigger-
It was when
It was,
the
I-
page was.
Yeah, I think it was 2019. I
Yeah.
can go back and look.
You can see
historic.
on the graph where it jumps up.
Yeah, I've
So
seen that. I want to
would
see
be-
where, okay,
That would be the year, probably.
okay, but you think around
I
20.
can come back with that
Perfect.
exact information for you.
So I specifically to this year's budget, we're getting an additional 1.3 this year over last year from the state. Again, lucky or they're printing money and we're gonna be the benefit until that runs out.
It's projected, right? It's just a projected number.
No,
So it's projected in terms of the economy. It is established that it's 5%, which is the big reason why we've been doing this, because we were so underfunded under what the statute said we were supposed to get for so many years that they've been bringing it up. As I talked about in the summary, the economy is kind of all over the place these days. But this revenue forecasting committee, it's a nonpartisan group of economists that look at the state. When you go in and you look at what they're looking at, you have to kind of have some level of comfort with, they're a little conservative, I think. And if you look at the actual to forecast over the last few years, they have been quite conservative. So that's why I put the full 4.6. I think if I want to put words in Leo's mouth, I think what Leo is trying to say is we get more revenue and our expenses go up. We get more revenue and our expenses go up. And that's why I am saying to you, this budget represents what I have heard from council. So it represents stewardship in capital investment that has not been happening. It involves raises, it involves keeping up with contractual obligations that were approved in prior councils. It involves an $81,000 increase in anticipated increase in fire protection fees, which we have no control over. And it also involves the fact that an ambulance that I could buy 3 years ago for $300,000 is that same ambulance spec'd out was well over 4, and we pulled the specs back to get it to 385. So the cost of doing business is going up.
fully appreciate all that, fully appreciate that we have things that are baked in, that we're making up contracts and all of that, but I do have trouble supporting a $1.3 million increase and still going to taxpayers and asking for an additional 200,000. So that's a broad, and I didn't say this until way late last budget season. I want to put that out, and I'd love to hear what, if I don't know if other councils are thinking about it in this way, and we can. I understand it costs more to do business, that across the board, but I think we do owe to our taxpayers an effort to determine where, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of extra money, and there's no such thing as extra money. And I just don't like the idea that we gobble it up and we spend every bit we get. That's just, maybe it's impossible to do anything different. I don't know. I haven't been all through this, but I'm approaching it with that mindset that I think we need to make taxpayers level.
And I think, Leo, when we engage in discussion with with the department chairs and we go through the budget and we do try to whittle it down. So as the process unfolds, knowing that you're interested keeping the costs down, and and we're all interested in keeping taxes down. Let's just have discussions about how to do that.
So the downside to that is I did it in what might be perceived as the 11th hour last year. Sophie? When I said, why don't we figure out how we can go cut 500,000? That was the 11th hour. I think
But
I
we
think
have
we
to
do
look at
that.
it, right, item by
Well,
item.
Well, but by that time, it's the 11th hour, right? If we're gonna say
It's the
something.
process.
So I guess one of the things I would just say is, staff has created a budget. And if you continue to read those words in the narratives in front of each one of the departments, you will see what we think is growing or not growing and why. So you will see that we have increased Parks and Recreation by $70,000. A little over 50 of that has to do with the increases that we perceive council wants to see. If you don't want to see those increases, then tell us and we can tell you what we can take out of the budget. When you look and you see a $30,000 increase in after-school programming that hits your expense line, but there is a corresponding revenue offset, and it has to do with the fact that we started a program last year that we thought we'd be lucky if we got 12 kids to go to, that's maxed out at 32. Expenses have gone up, but so have revenues. So, I mean, I think you need to kind of dig into where the offsetting revenues kind of are in here, because there are some of those. I think looking at things like we want to, there's $14,500 shared between Public Works and WPCF on asset management software that will give us a high degree of data to support the requests that we make to council for capital improvements. In the past, Rob and Chris and I have worked off spreadsheets, and this is the way it kind of feels, not feels, but with our expertise. Quite frankly, lately, this council has been demanding a different level of data and information to go behind that if you want that level of detail, you've got to give us a framework to be able to track it. And spreadsheets are not cutting it. We have been trying. So there are things in here that I would strongly encourage you to read the narrative, because the narrative will tell you what we think you're telling us you want, or what we need to get where we think you want us to be. There's $9,500 in here that's a donation to Orono Economic Development Corporation for the Caribou Bog. You know, the staff has done its best job to take what it thinks it hears from council and put it out here as the work plan. It's council's job to tell us what you don't want us to do. I think where you get frustration from staff is when you want to cut the resource without cutting the expectation, where we feel like we are super thin right now in terms of staff and in terms of resources.
So whenever I've worked with budget in other institutions, there's two ways that I've been told to go about it. One is like, okay, give me the percentage that you want me to cut out of this budget and we'll do it. And that seems like a bad fit. The other way is to prioritize so that each person at the table prioritizes for themselves what are their most important priorities, and then looks at either how those priorities can be adjusted or other places that can cut without impacting their priorities. And I think that's the discussion that we have to have, because I don't think telling you we need to cut X dollars or we need to cut X percent at the gross level, at the max level is helpful. Right.
So what happens, and I'll use the example of council was going through a budget season where they wanted to save money. That would be every budget. And one of the ideas that came up is we had a vacant shared labor position between Public Works and WPCF. And so council said, we won't fill it. Don't fill it. We won't give you the money to fill it. And at that point in time, we said, okay, that's great. Understand, here is what's going to happen if that position isn't filled. And council decided from a service level perspective, they were willing to take that service level, which was no dedicated sidewalk person. Quite frankly, nobody really minded sewer, not as many miles of sewer not getting flushed. They don't see that. But they certainly saw it when that person transitioned to public works and there wasn't somebody assigned to the sidewalk. And so in December, when everybody was up, well, not everybody, but a couple of very vocal people were upset that the sidewalks weren't getting plowed as quickly. And Rob and I came into council and council's like, why isn't this getting done? And we said, remember that conversation that we had? We don't have the resource for that. And council said, you're right. So let's put that away for next year. And then they decided that that wasn't a service level they would accept. Those, you're not going to get any pushback from staff as long as if you're pulling resources out, you're telling us what we're not doing.
I just wanted to follow up on what you just said, Jeff. So I guess, from my perspective, I actually do feel like I would really like to hear from staff. Leo's saying, okay, and I have to say, I agree. If we're getting 1.3 million from the state, it makes a lot of sense to me that we should be looking to try to keep tax stable. I also really hear what Sophie's saying, that council's asked for certain things. I'm aware, especially on the rec program, it seems like that's come from a lot of directions. So I feel like it would be very helpful to me to ask staff, okay, if we needed to keep this flat and we're not going to get rid of the rec program money because everybody seems to be saying that needs to grow, what would staff suggest as where we find that 200,000? I think that's actually a really useful request to staff because the nitty gritty data, whatever that we don't, and like this one can't go. This is bad. If this goes, the world falls apart. Right. And I don't always know that. I guess I would love to hear that from staff in a next meeting. Like what's the proposal?
So our budget process, we will have each staff will
Right.
present to us, and that's where you can.
But
ask
I'm
the
actually not
questions.
asking individual departments. I'm saying I think it's legit and I've seen it done at other boards and councils to say, here's the proposed budget. And also, what do you recommend goes if we decide we need 209 to go so that taxes stay flat? And that goes to Sophie level discussion, not us individually with each department, because that's piecemeal at that point.
So that's what Leo did at the end of
Right.
last year. What
Right.
you're asking for is
Right.
for me to do it now.
Yeah.
And is 209 the number?
I would like to see that to start.
To be candid, that isn't the number because that doesn't keep our taxes flat.
Oh, I thought that was the number.
We've got 450 from the school that's gone up, and we've got 23
Oh.
from the county that we know is gone up.
Right.
So it's
So
we
the
made this-
number is closer to 680 as far as stabilizing councils.
So it's our job to eat the difference between
Yeah.
the school and the county.
So the school gets what they want.
This isn't us, them.
I'd like to
that's
see
where you're
209.
at.
So
It's not,
Leo
though.
might like to
But
see
when you
something
cut
else.
municipal services, when you cut municipal services in favor of a school budget that has also gone up, then it is the town that's taking the hit. So, and I hear you, I do. This is my sixth budget, the sixth one I've done. And so everybody comes at it from a different perspective, right? So listening to when we have our budget process, listening to staff as they present to us, right? And you go through it first, you make those decisions, you find those questions. Do we really need to spend this much here? I go through it with a highlighter.
But
Then the process itself starts to work. And you can ask those questions, but trying to say, I want you to get rid of this and this and this. It doesn't make any sense to me. And I have done this before.
I've done budgets as well.
I know
Carol.
you have,
Did it
Leo.
last year,
I
Carol.
understand that. I'm not gonna
I've done it
argue
many
with you.
years,
I'm not
so I
arguing
get
with
it.
you.
So what
I'm
happens-
telling you that there's another perspective.
What are our standards?
Understood.
I know. I get that.
Okay, go ahead.
So
And just when Jeff spoke, I was thinking kind of the same thing. Those are both good. Like, we can look but also hear from here. But yeah,
So what I'm hearing is you'd like to see two scenarios. One that cuts $209,159 and one that cuts $682,211.
That is what I'm saying. Cheryl does not agree.
So
Here,
here's,
no, it's fine, it's fine.
here's my thought. I hear the value in what both of you are saying, quite frankly, I do. And I'd rather get, if this is gonna be the ask, I'd rather get it now than later.
That was my point, because I know I was 11th hour last year, and again, this is an exercise. I think it's a healthy exercise. Again, it may come back that we can't budge off this. I get it. But I think it's our duty to ask and make some
So
if needed.
what you're probably gonna get from staff, because we had a lovely budget going. I was having a wonderful budget season. It looked like we were down $400,000 overall on the municipal side. I was in heaven. And then I discovered that our Excel spreadsheet went the wrong cell and it went up $700,000. So I had a meeting where I brought my senior team together. Because each one of these department heads feel like they have squeezed as much as they can squeeze out of the budget to do the things that they feel like they're supposed to do. And the answer that came back was, remember, Sophie, council sets the service level. So what you're probably going to get, as opposed to, I think you should cut this position, is going to be something along the lines of, here are service level changes that you might want to consider. So you're going to see an electrician that has been added to this budget. That electrician is in direct response to coming to council meetings time after time after time with comments about traffic lights not working, pedestrian signals not working, streetlights being out, and people having to wait a long time to get them fixed. We started to look into it. We also discovered that WPCF has got a single shop electrician who is going to retire soon. Can't get an actual date from him. That is highly specialized. And it probably would make a lot of sense for us to train somebody to take over there. So what you'll see is that new? Yep. Is there a reason for that? Yep. If we don't do it, what does status quo mean? Because I'm not sure council really understands right now what status quo means there. And then let you make the decision, because that's your decision and not our decision.
Jeff, can I just say, what I like about this, Cheryl, is that I feel like then when we meet by department, we actually know not just here's this proposed budget, but if we were trying to bring the budget down, then by department, we can actually ask those questions about what would that actually cost. So I love this idea of Sophie giving us these options ahead of our meetings with departments, so that when we meet with departments, we can really hear what will that impact be if we go for the 209 decrease or the 680, the 2 Leo decrease. So thank you, because I think it would make those department conversations much more productive for me to really understand the impact of where we set.
Yes, that makes sense.
Thank you.
I was the one complaining about the streetlights. I was the one complaining about traffic lights. I trust traffic lights are something that our electrician, that's a service at a company.
Not in this budget, no.
No.
Will not be.
But we wouldn't have I don't think we have the traffic light expertise, I assume.
So
vendor has
we
to account for
have-
something.
We have extensive traffic light expertise without the license to put the hand in the box. We can train somebody to do that fairly easily.
I guess as part of that, I did see that position in there, and I would be interested to know what we spend on electricians, obviously. If it's some type of, what's the return, obviously, it's a pretty.
And the thing that's going to be difficult is that for a long time, we used the city of Bangor. So that's part of our budget. And now we don't have them anymore.
And I was also curious about partnerships with university. They have an electrical shop up there.
Yep, we've asked about that. they do not have the capacity to take us on.
But we do have invoices from what we've paid for electricians.
Just as long as we understand that what we used to pay $200 for is now $1,500 to mobilize them, click them out. So, I mean, that's my issue is that if we just pull raw data, you're gonna have to extrapolate that
Did we
data
have Bangor this year?
for part of the share.
I look forward to hearing what you come up with for these various things, even if we find that,
Right.
like Leah is saying, we might not find that there's room to cut in these places. I'm really looking forward to starting the discussion with some of these ideas for possible cuts in mind. This is going to be very helpful. Appreciate it.
I have a totally different question. I was just waiting whenever anybody's done. Did you have anything about this? You're good?
Come on, Dan.
No, I'll hop in. Yeah,
Okay.
I think it's important that the people with a granular, understanding of what happens when. I don't want to be part of a discussion of asking, people to work hard, do more with less. That's not good policy. And it's not fair to our people. But to the extent that the buck stops with the council, to the extent that we want to have a budget, we want to have an opportunity to get to a budget that doesn't have an impact on taxes or, one scenario. Another scenario is we want to, that doesn't have an opportunity on the municipal side. And I think it makes sense for the people that have the granular expertise and understanding of what's at stake, bring those forward to us. So we're not, they're the ones that know the best. And I think longer term, I think it's an opportunity for us to, not this budget cycle, but like 11th hour, if we started looking ahead to next year, what kind of conversations can we have about collaboration with the schools, with the universities? I mean, as tough as our budget is, it's going to be even harder at the university. And given their challenges with enrollment and whatnot. So, I mean, I think there's room to bring people that we never let it, crisis go to waste, right? Bring people together and let's talk about what we can do better as a community, because we're all the same taxpayer, whether, supporting the same things.
Exactly.
I think one of the things that would be really helpful for us to talk about just a little bit, I mean, wait, you had a question.
I do, but I can wait. It's okay. I'm jotted down.
That if you consider that each night of the budget, we're dealing with a department or a group of departments, and a department in our speak is different. It's usually a grouping of individual divisions, which we all think of as departments, if that. So police, fire, public safety is one department of public safety. So I think when you look at the amount of material that you get for each of these nights that we're gonna meet and talk, one of the things I have noticed over time is that staff is spending an awful lot of time in those meetings regurgitating what you already have in your book. And we have, at times, we put on these 20-minute PowerPoint presentations that, again, regurgitate what you have in your book that the public has access to. I talked with Jeff a little bit as we were trying to plan how to prepare for these workshops, because at the end of the day, these workshops are for you. They're not for me. They're not for my staff. They're for us to understand what you want, but they're for you. And so our thought this year is that I don't intend to do PowerPoint presentations. I intend to come in and you have the material and for you to ask questions. If you're looking for something different, I want to make sure I prep my staff accordingly. But the thought being, we have spoken about the granular, and this is your opportunity to have conversation with department heads. When we get focused in on every line item, in this notebook, you have a commentary on every single line item. And I think we are here to answer questions. If you don't agree with how 4 sponges equals $100, then I think Chris would be happy to talk to you about that. But I have found us falling into this, let's go line by line to regurgitate what we already have. And then we get to the end and people don't know kind of what to think. And I was kind of hoping we could use these times more as we've given you the material. Can we answer your questions? Can we help facilitate your own discussion about what your priorities are, which then may cause us to go back and revamp what we are bringing forward for a budget.
Oh. You want to cut, you got it written down though, right?
I do.
I never written mine down, so I can lose it.
Go, man.
So what do you think, what's your expectation in terms of how you'll ask the department heads to come in with these two scenarios? Are you gonna ask each of them to come in with a percentage of it, or just sort of a catalog, a la carte list of, well, we could not give the money to the Caribou Bog Center, and that's $9,500. We could not plow on Tuesdays, and that's, 20.
So the not plowing on Tuesdays probably won't go in.
I like the outlandish examples, that's just.
But in the past, I don't ask for specific dollar amounts or percentages across the board.
Yep.
My team is well aware that we are a team, and everybody in different years have different needs. So I will put the call out that I'm looking for $209,000. So we call this tier 1, tier 2 cuts. And we will generate a list. We've done this several times. I will tell you, there will be stuff on that list that you think doesn't belong there. And there will be stuff on that list that staff thinks shouldn't go there. But if you're asking how we can reasonably operate, we would come to you with that in mind. The reason that there will be things that people don't like on there is that the most reasonable things to go for first are the things that aren't tied to mandates. And we have those things because we want those things, right?
It's a hard job.
So
I think it's really important, not just for us, but I also think for the public. Because then they also hear, like, if we go at this level, here's what we lose. And I think that gives the public a better chance to have feedback when their time comes. So I think this is really useful to have this tier 1 and tier 2, and I appreciate it. Can you tell us, when is our first meeting where we start with a department? What date is that?
Wednesday.
Okay, so by Wednesday, you're not likely to have this tier 1 and tier 2 stuff. So we'll do that first one without that, or you think they'll be there by Wednesday?
I really believe in the adage of under promise, over deliver, so I won't promise
Right.
it for Wednesday. But I also think that most of the staff this is not their first rodeo, and they're probably going to go back to other cuts I have asked them for.
I just want us to be prepared for that. So thanks for that clarity. I do have a question. I also have one comment, which isn't a question exactly, but addresses something Leo said earlier. Should I start with that one?
Go whatever.
Okay. I just wanted to say, like, Leo, to your point about looking at, we're getting money from the state increasingly the last 3 years. I really do. Also, I would really like to see our, at least the municipal side, be able to stay flat if we can figure out a way to do it that the public agrees is a level of service they can live with. And I also think we should look at, when we look at that 1.3, the one scenario where I could envision being comfortable with it not staying flat is if we have a compelling narrative, we can, speak to each other and to the public about, there were previous years where the state money was very low. And it seems to me that that may have impacted what's going on with our capital assets. And so I guess, Lee, I just want to say maybe the one scenario where I think that there's a compelling narrative to the public, even at this increased 1.3 mil, might be yes, and we are finally using that. But we didn't do for all these years when we didn't have the money. So I just want to put that out there, that may come into play with our various buildings and capital. And I don't know yet because I haven't delved into the detail, but just my own philosophy is that might be the one scenario where money going up from the state, I could feel comfortable saying, but we have to fix the things we didn't fix for whatever number of years we didn't get that money from the state. I don't know that that's our scenario, but I just want to throw it out there. And then could I ask my question when you're done responding?
Yeah,
Respond.
just
respond.
on that note, I don't know, I've heard it mentioned a couple times, that at some point council committed to something with regards to capital. I don't know what that point is or what was committed off the top of my head,
Would you like me to off the
but I
top of my
bet you
head?
do.
Yep, I do.
Because I think we do have some capital questions we need to.
So we're dealing with capital infrastructure, and the issue that we had is council, that's the easiest place for people to cut and get big dollars, cut that road project and get $200,000 or $300,000 towards your budget. And council did that for several years, and we were down in the $200,000 and $300,000 a year allocation to capital infrastructure improvements. That created this need for you have a $700,000 project and it's taking you 4 years to save up for that, which bottlenecked us incredibly and got us into a real jam. One might say a traffic jam. So when we were looking at taking advantage of low municipal bond rates and refunding $17 million worth of debt, we, council agreed as part of a multi-step discussion with Rob Yerxa, looked at the total public infrastructure assets that we have, what it would cost over time to maintain them. So putting them on a 12-year cycle and dividing that up for what the investment should be each year. And that came to between $800,000 and $850,000 a year. So they went out and they borrowed $2.25 million to go towards public infrastructure investment to clear the backlog. 250,000 of that was for municipal broadband that we ended up reallocating to infrastructure when OTO Fiber made a deal to bring fiber in at no additional municipal cost. So that 850 is if we draw on the taxes across the board at $850,000 a year, and we just know that in perpetuity, you now have a stable draw, so there isn't up and down. And we also have an ongoing commitment. That ongoing commitment and a stable capital infrastructure plan also allows Rob to go and get the state and regional dollars to help match that. Now, what's not on here is the village partnership, village VPI, Village Partnership Initiative, which is the $30 million upgrade to Route 2. And I think we need to talk with Rob about when he comes, kind of what that looks like. That would be about a $2.8 million match for the town. We are right now querying DOT to see if we can use the $2.4 million that Susan Collins' office put in for us for the Route 2 improvements as part of the match, or if there was a way to buy it down. It's always tricky when you're using federal funds and federal funds. Sometimes you can put them together and sometimes you can't. So kind of figure out how that will work. But that's what, when you see that constant draw, the place you really want to get, you, Leo, really want to get to in the capital investment plan is where we could have a consistent draw across the board, because that would no longer impact the tax rate. So when I look next door in the fire department and see a $1.2 million tower truck that is absolutely critical to our response in this community, that is, I don't know, 14 years old, doesn't have a lot more time left, and we have $187 in the fire department reserve account. That makes me really worried, especially when we tried to, last year, we, I think, had $40-something thousand allocated towards equipment in the capital budget.
Quick questions directly.
Yeah, I have one too. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh,
No, you
just
go.
when you were saying that we took out the bond and we undid the backlog of traffic jam capital infrastructure projects, so that's done. And now this 800 to 850 would maintain. But does that include what needed to be done on the various buildings? It does not, right? So
Capital
that's a different thing
infrastructure.
entirely. So I
So-
just want to put that out there for the public that the infrastructure we have caught ourselves up on, but the buildings we have not. And I feel like that's what I was asking my question about. I think we have buildings that we have a backlog on right
And
now.
I think what you're gonna find, Sarah, is that by maintaining that consistent draw on infrastructure, it makes planning and the impact to taxpayers much smaller. We have gone from trying, again, kick the can with the facilities. And when you go from 20 or 30,000 to, if you look at the capital plan, staff is identifying over $300,000 a year for the next 4 years as kind of where we need to be with that. I mean, so the issue is you can take projects out or find alternative funding like ARPA funding for some of those projects, but you're going to be right back in the same position next year when you're looking at a $700,000 increase in the.
I guess what I'd like to say is I'd really like to see us as a town get to the place where we have a stable draw that maintains our facilities also, like what we have for the infrastructure. I think if we could hit both of those, then we could begin some long-range planning that, you know, wouldn't lead to these ups and downs necessarily for taxpayers.
And I would add one more to that, which would be equipment.
Oh, yes, sorry, that's a third. Got it. But that's what I would like to see us working toward developing. And now I'm done. Go, Leo.
Just was curious, that bond, when was that?
2020, October of 2020.
And we've been doing the 8, so is that when we started doing the 850 a year too?
Yep.
And are we also doing something where we're sticking something in a reserve each year or no? It's committed to a reserve.
So we have an equipment reserve, but we are not raising money. So raising means you're going to taxpayers to get new dollars. Appropriating just means that you have the money and you put it somewhere, right? So each year you create a capital budget. Rob needs you to approve a budget today for things that may be just going into design and might take 2 or 3 years for us to get through that process. In the past, council would simply carry forward all of those capital infrastructure funds that weren't used on projects that were in process or hadn't been started yet. Stu Dexter came and gave council a piece of his mind about the degree of carry forward and the fact that he felt like that was overtaxing people. So when we looked at what other communities do, when they get to the end of the year, they sweep all of the capital funds into a capital reserve and then encumber those funds for those various projects. Usually there's a little bit left, which we have been allocating towards projects that have come up. The Webster project, when we wanted the Webster neighborhood project, that was one of those things that we looked at. Smaller kind of projects. And at any time, council can reallocate those funds because those are assigned funds. Those are not dedicated funds.
So that's what we do, is we sweep them?
Yes.
And
So that's what that capital infrastructure reserve is, swept funds, most of which are for projects that are already identified.
Capital infrastructure reserve, where is that?
In your audit. Would you like a
It's
list?
not on here.
No, would you like a list
Yeah.
of the reserve
Yes,
balances?
please. Thank you.
And you said there is an equipment, that's not the equipment reserve that you just talked about.
We have a separate equipment reserve that for a long time, we used to take money out of each year to offset the cost of buying equipment, but it got low. And so we decided now we are in the process of appropriating funds into that. We used that when the tower truck lost the ladder and there was a $45,000 repair bill. That's where it got paid out of. So instead of appropriating money in equipment, equipment repair, operating line items for the big projects, we appropriate it for what we think are the smaller projects, and we know that we can take that money out of that reserve account for the big repairs.
Where is that reserve account?
I'll give you a
We're gonna
list.
get us all of them.
You have it. I'll give you a list. I haven't updated A3, Bob Bass's right on.
So Sonia had her hand up a whole bunch before.
Yeah, I was trying to get to her. I'm not sure where she's
Is she
gone
gone
now.
again?
She's
If she comes back, we'll
Maybe
address
get
it.
her
but
jump in if she gets back on the screen.
We'll try.
My original question for Sophie was totally different than all this. This was all really helpful. I'm very glad we had this conversation. I also just wanted to know, is there more detail somewhere in here that I haven't found yet on the second paragraph on your very first page one? We're in the second phase of a three-phase plan to address wage levels. Is there some citation about that or more info I can get about what previous council passed and what phase 3 is and when phase 3 is coming? And do you have some information on that you could share with council?
I do. We're gonna update it for position changes and new people like in Public Works that those numbers have changed. But in general, we spent some time with council 2 years ago looking at comparatives, both private sector and public sector for our employees and trying to adjust pay scales. When we looked at all of it, we discovered that where we needed to get to was it was like over $300,000 jump. So again, the infamous former counselor Tom Perry came and I sat down and we came up with a 3-step plan. We took all of the employees that earn under $70,000 a year and we divided their jump in 2. So they got the first half last year, the second half this year. Employees that earned over $70,000 or more took that jump in 3 years. So I've got it. It's old information. I've got to update it.
I don't even need to see what it specifically looks like for each one. That's helpful what you said. And maybe the comps that were originally looked at is what towns we were comparing to or whatever
Yep.
groups would be helpful to have.
Yeah, I think I've got a slide presentation that we did for council, but it's 2 years old.
Yeah, I get it, but I still just want to see where it came from. Maybe I thought others on council might want to see, but if not, just look at me. I'd like to see. Yeah. Thanks.
I think other folks kind of saw it when we talked about.
I know I'm new, so that's why I was putting it forth, but I would
Copy
like,
me.
I'd like to see it. Yeah.
Email. Yeah,
So
okay.
thank you, Sophie.
Do you have any other overview questions?
I'm correct on the format that you're good with us coming in ready to answer questions. Understand, I do tell my staff that when they answer questions, they need to be right, or they need to say, I don't have that information, I'll get back to you. So be prepared for either one. If you get really creative, you might get that.
So which sections are we doing Wednesday?
Yeah,
So-
which one are we on? That would be helpful to
Wednesday,
know.
we're on general government,
Which is you.
which is, I'm gonna make Bell go first. No, it's me, Bell. So it's the town council, town manager, finance department, town clerk's office, insurances, debt other. Town clerk's office includes elections and general assistance.
Sophie, when we look at our schedule of meetings, does it already notate which section we're on for each meeting? Lovely, then I'm good to go. Then I'll know what to read for each meeting.
And if you can't find that list, if you go online.
Yep.
to Current budget process, it lays it right out there for
Okay,
you.
good.
And Sophie, would it be helpful to staff if you know you've got a question to
Yeah,
shoot it in?
that's always good. If you know you've got questions or that you're gonna want, you're not, you need some clarification on something. If you shoot me questions in advance, that always makes us look like rock stars.
Sophie, can you say anything about the ARPA funds on page 5, a little bit more that you talk about there? I know they're not in our current budget, correct?
Yeah,
There's been some discussion of what we might do with them. I don't know when that discussion happened and if anyone could bring me up to speed on that.
So we actually, instead of me blathering on, let me just quickly bring it up. Council's approach to using ARPA is, I think, a little bit different than other places. So we brought in $1,141,870 in ARPA funds. I've got a spreadsheet right here. I'll share with you.
Great.
Town council appropriated $400,331 for various projects. It included stipends for life safety during COVID. We purchased 2 Lucas CPR devices so that people weren't leaning over folks exhaling. And then council, we did a council tech upgrade to council chambers so that we would make it easier for people to be able to participate. And then council really looked at outside of COVID, what were one-time kind of expenses that could reduce the draw on taxes. And for that, the public safety director last year needed a vehicle, so they purchased a vehicle. The pool, which they thought was important to fix the leaks in the pool, that was about 110,000. Oh, well, no, 80,000. And then the public safety building assessment and related repairs, they put aside 110,000 for that. So when we look at all of those things, and we had about $32,000 in projected overruns that council appropriated more money for. So at the end of the day, we have $708,549 that has not been encumbered. We've talked about some infrastructure upgrade in the Webster neighborhood. We have sanitary and storm sewer systems that need some work. Staff has dug into that some more. And we'll come back when council's ready to talk about that after or during the budget or the next. But there's probably, so the 708 has not been encumbered and can be used. We have to encumber all of the money by
24.
October 2024 and expend it by 2026.
And can you clarify what the criteria are for what the ARPA money can be used for?
Sure. It kind of sort of depends on when we make the purchase. The initial purchases fell under the first rule, which it was for response. You could pay that premium pay for response and other things related to making the COVID response. And then also sanitary and storm sewer upgrade.
Okay,
Just
and
and broadband, which we weren't really considering broadband. Then the rule changed when they did the final rule, and we took what was known as the standard deduction, almost like, you know, the IRS, I suppose. What that says is the first $10 million that we got, we could just attribute to a loss of revenue and can be used for general government activity. There are a few things that are not allowed, like can't put it in a rainy day fund. You can't, like, we couldn't say, oh, our truck is going to come due. Why don't we take this 700,000 and just put it in reserve for the ladder? You can't do that unless we're going to buy the ladder truck before 2026. We have to just be careful that it's not a shell game of we'll expend money, but it's really simply tax relief. You're not allowed to give it as straight tax relief.
But at this point, you're saying with this new change, it's allowed to be used for loss of revenue, the whole amount that
Yep.
we.
So
received.
I claimed it as loss of revenue.
Right.
And, but not the things that when we purchased, when we made the stipends to the public safety team, when we bought the Lucas device, and there was one other thing that I think those were the two things we had directly attributed to COVID response. Because we made those purchases before the rule changed, we were following the first rule.
Right, but at this point, we're following the second rule with what remains.
Yep.
And so really, most areas of our budget, this money is eligible to be used for potentially.
Yes.
Okay.
I would caution,
That's what I'm asking. I
Yep.
want to know all the stipulations. Yeah.
I would caution that, and I've seen other communities fall into the trap of using it for operations as opposed to a single project or something, or else you'll end up with a cliff.
One-time expense. Yeah.
How does it though, like, so you can't use it for tax relief, but you could use it for any kind of operation and then have to raise taxes less.
So you could theoretically
Yeah.
spend $708,000 on your facilities. Or a portion of that,
Yeah.
less on facilities, so that instead of raising taxes for those facilities, you're bringing them.
Mhm.
That's fine, because I can show a direct expenditure for that.
Yep.
What I can't do, and what I think some communities were trying to do, is lower the tax rate because people were feeling pinched because of COVID and the economy. To just say, let's 700,000, we'll put that as a,
We could just
Offset.
pretend the police department was free this year and pay them. Yeah.
one of the projects that we have talked about that I think would be a priority for staff, even if we reallocated some of the sewer, sanitary sewer, is we have a sewer main on Hillside that is right now backing up and probably needs to be repaired. So we want to talk about that, even though that won't take the full 700.
Okay. So currently staff is looking at the sanitary sewer, but really this money can go where staff and
Yeah.
council together decide.
Yeah,
Okay.
so when we originally came to council, we had projects enough to spend all of it out. Hearing council's feedback, we've kind of rethought part of that. But it would leave about $500,000, and then I'll allow that one problem area in the sewer to be fixed.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
And I did not put that in my budget because I'm not gonna be so forward as to think I will tell you where to spend our.
Yeah, I just was clear something we needed to talk about. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Any other budget overview questions? All right, well, thank you, Sophie. Next on our agenda is managers report.
I know you have two people who have come specifically because of the budget, and normally you would allow community members.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, I'm negligent and new in my responsibility to coordinating this meeting.
Great.
But yeah, we would welcome any comment you'd like to offer.
Wait for the specific.
Okay. Thank you. All right, so Sonia, welcome back. You had a question or comment?
I've
earlier.
been here all along. I just, Harrison was looking at the screen and I was like, maybe they missed me. Hi, people.
Yeah,
Sometimes.
you fell off our screen, but
Again.
again, you've fallen off our screen, but please ask your question or comment.
Oh, that's all right. I did have a comment earlier, but the moment has passed. I mostly was just going to say that I like Sophie's proposal for how to do the budget conversations this year with less sort of PowerPoints that and more expectation that we'll just make sure we do our homework as counselors walking into those meetings, and look forward to discussing with you all moving forward.
Great, thank you.
Or if there is time, but it's a
Well,
small one, but if not, I can hold it. It's in this general report, so.
We have. We're coming up again, I mean, please ask it, but we're coming up against our 2 hours, we have a manager's report still. So.
It can wait. I just wanted to know at some point, Sophie, the information on page 9 about council having received guidance that the undesignated funds needed to be at a certain level, forget the best bond approval and all that. Do you also have information about what level is recommended for by the bond world that we need to keep that at?
So it was the 11 to 15%.
11 to 15, that comes later. Perfect. Thank you. I'm good. Go ahead, Jeff.
All right, awesome. So the other thing that we wanted to get to before the hour gets too late is town manager.
So the most important thing is just to take a moment to congratulate Zach Turner for obtaining his Maine Municipal Treasurer Certificate. So he worked hard to get that done, and that came in. I opened that letter today, so that was good. Also to let folks know that we are working with the University of Maine to get the UMaine and American flags up. Those, as part of that project, go up for Flag Day, if we can swing it, and come down after Veterans Day. So just to let you know that's happening. We are seeing an incredible run on general assistance applications. We're seeing them for things that like we got one today from somebody who's not even a resident of Orono. So we're seeing more denials than we normally would see as well. I would encourage you, if you hear from people who are upset because they applied for general assistance and they didn't get it, that there is a fair hearing process that they can avail themselves. I want to make sure I'm on the right track. We got the new engine, and the old engine we put out to bid pursuant to the policy. We had one bid received. It was from a community in Maine looking to purchase it for $6,000, which, given what's wrong with it, is a fair price. I would go ahead and normally just sell it and do the bill of sale. It's over $6,000. It is not explicit in the ordinance that the town manager can sell it, but neither is it anywhere in the ordinance that it has to come back to council to sell. I've used the process that's in the ordinance. Given the change in council, I do not want to sell something and then get called on the carpet for it. So I want to make sure I'm on the right track.
I'm happy to dispose of that property.
Sounds
Same.
good. It was a nice article in the paper. Did you see it show up in the paper when it was for sale?
Oh, no.
It was in the paper with a picture of it and the fact that it was for sale.
Yeah, well, it's a sad piece of equipment, but it's a small fire department with a lot of volunteers who are willing to put in the grease to fix it, which is good. And the last is I want to give you a very, very high level update about the unionization effort. So everybody received the notice. Thank you, Councillor Demerit, for helping wordsmith the announcement that AFSCME Council 93 in the town have agreed on the composition of the unit. So that means what positions would be covered. At the end of the day, they agreed that the 3 positions that we questioned as not being legal were in fact not legal. And the 3 clerk positions that I said, wait a minute, we actually have 5 clerks and you want part-time, so we need to talk about this. We settled on the initial 3 clerks. So anybody who is scheduled to work, regularly scheduled to work an average of 16 hours a week. So that was filed on Friday. There's a notice on the website along with the information. We did receive word, so there's a 2-step process. The first is we agreed and recognized the covered composition of the unit. The next, the Labor Relations Board had to go through a card check process. And the word that we received today is that there will be an election. So I have instructed our attorney that there are things that the labor board will require me to do as far as notice, but beyond that, the town is not. So if this comes up, employees are really required to do their own research and make their own decision. The town doesn't touch the cards. I don't intend to go to the hearing where they open and count the cards. And we will get notified whether or not the employees want the union, which I think is what council has said all along is the important piece.
So they've done the card count or they haven't? I was-
So they did a card check and it's gonna go to an election.
Got it.
So they have somewhere between 30 and 50%. You need 50% plus one.
Okay, so we're not card counting, we're at election stage. I just want to be clear where we're at now. Thank you.
So did we get like a written thing back from the Bureau of the Labor Standards?
Yeah, so I got a note from our attorney that passed along what the labor MLRB.
Makes sense to post that note if it's from the, is it on their stationery? or whatever?
So I'm going to get something from MLRB in the next couple of days. When I get that, that will be public and I'll post that.
Nice. The people that were interested in March, I mean, do we feel like, I don't know, like, I haven't heard from anybody, but I wasn't on the council in March, so I wasn't on those emails, but I'm hopeful that people who had concerns or have been heard, getting the information they need to stay on top of,
So I will tell you, given my schedule, I have not gone back and emailed each individual one. If that's important, I can do that, but I will tell you, I have been overwhelmed.
I understand.
I think the important thing is that every document that we can make public, we are putting out in public, and the town is taking no position, and town management is taking no position in terms of the organization. Yeah.
I think that's all I have.
Yeah.
Just so everyone knows and remembers, commencement is Saturday and graduate ceremony is Friday night. So our town will be full, lots of people coming.
So that does highlight for me that we lived through the non-main day. And the unofficial counts at this point. So I would really like to recognize Deputy Chief Merrill and Captain LaJoy, who I think did an incredible job in planning for this event. And they have a wonderful way of balancing the safety and the understanding that sometimes not getting involved is a better approach. But along with that, we were welcomed by the University of Maine. They opened up their Emergency Operations Center. staff helped tech that. Chief Flag has been an incredible support as we work through that process. Out of the President Farini Mundy's office, she has also been very supportive and given us the things that we needed to move that forward. The American Legion, where would we be without the American Legion? So they opened their doors and we had the state police come up. So the state police had their crowd management control tactical force here, and also some of their it used to be OUI enforcement, but now it's got the marijuana leaf on the side of the truck too. And they did a really nice job, I think, for us. We are not expecting to see a bill out of that, which is remarkable. That's several thousands of dollars. Dan, Deputy Chief Merrill, reports that the crowd was about half the size it was from last year, a little bit more subdued, that there were a couple of the kind of beer can throwing incidents towards the end of the evening, but they really petered out quickly. I've not heard from the Avenue, but I also, I think it's easy to sit back and blame the Avenue for a lot of things. But they had a pretty significant security team aimed at trying to mitigate the event. So I do think it's important to kind of recognize that this was, while my team and my EMS team, they ran we ran over 30 calls last year. We ran 2 this year. So I think it's an effort. Our hope is that maybe we can half it next year too. And eventually it will kind of dissipate.
as they start to graduate.
Yeah. Graduation is a huge day
Yeah.
in Orono for public safety again. Our team has really been pushed lately, but they're doing a great job.
Any other public comment? Anybody online?
I did have some more
Yes.
things to say, if I'm allowed.
Yeah, go ahead, Harry. Yes.
Do you want me to introduce myself again? Yeah, I'm Harrison Goldspiel. I'm a graduate student at the University of Maine. I live in 7 Cassidy Lane in Orono. I just wanted to clarify, I think, a few points that were raised in the discussion about unionization that are important to make as we think this going forward as a town. One of the things is that this is not just about low pay, and I talked about this last week. It's about not getting paid on time. It's about only getting paid once a month, and when you start out, that being several months after you've started. And being responsible for all of the costs of moving and starting out a life, which can be very difficult if you're from another country. It's about insufficient healthcare and about a lack of transparency with the university about changes to the healthcare and experiencing lapses in coverage frequently, every year almost. And it's about insufficient resources for resolving power dynamics and unfair, unsafe working conditions for many graduate student workers. Another point I think I want to clarify is that, because this is a common thing, a common talking point that's worth discussing, is that our tuition is paid for, but we don't see that money ever as income. And at the end of the day, we still make less than a living wage, even though most of us work well over 20 hours a week. And many of us are taking courses that serve as direct job training for the requirements of our work, for our research, that are required by our committee, by our professors to finish our degree. And I don't know of any other employers that would charge their employees for required job training courses. And if you see it that way, tuition waivers and scholarships, as they're currently phrased, can really be interpreted differently, as I think they should. I'm actually not taking any classes right now. I'm a full-time researcher. I work for the last 2 weeks. I've been working 10 to 12-hour days, 7 days a week, getting paid $27,000 a year to study the rare and threatened species in wetlands in the town of Orono. That's how much I'm getting paid, not from the town of Orono, but by a grant and by my advisor to study these creatures and these things that we care about in our town. So I thought I would just kind of add that in there, that I still have a tuition waiver, but I'm a full-time researcher right now that's getting paid that much money for the town, doing work in the town. The other point I want to make is that not all students are here for just 2 years. Many master's students are here for 3 years. PhD students like myself are here for 4, but more commonly 5 or 6 or even more. And that's a lot of time to spend in a town, to be a resident in a town, and to be a member of that town, and to be paid consistently under a living wage, and to be receiving working conditions and resources that are consistently not meeting your needs as a worker. And I don't know much about all the businesses in town in Orono, but I would wager that some of them don't last as long as the average graduate worker in the town of Orono in terms of their residency. And, you know, I was going to kind of leave it there, but then I looked at the agenda and I noticed something in the agenda. I don't know if you all have the same document that I do in front of you, but, you know, at the top of the page, there's a little logo for the town of Orono, and it says something on the logo. Does anybody see what it says right under town of Orono there?
University of Maine.
Yeah, it says the University of Maine. You know, it doesn't say home to Orono's public schools, although I know that they're really great public schools. It doesn't say home to Pat's Pizza, although I know it's a well-regarded institution. I'm from New York City, so I can't really comment on that. It says the
You
University.
said enough. All right, we're done with him.
It says the University of Maine, and I think for the town of Orono to have the University of Maine in its logo at the top of its council meeting agenda, but to not want to weigh in on a comment about workers that are also many of them residents who are being taken advantage of by that employer is really saying something. And I think that your voice does matter to the unionization process. I think that it's important to note this isn't the first time that Maine graduate workers have discussed unionizing in recent years. It's been brought up, I think, at least twice. And in those occasions, it was shut down early on by administrators who said, no, that can't happen. So while we're having good working relationships seemingly with administration on moving forward towards unionization, we have some evidence from the past that would suggest that having solidarity and voices from outside that are supporting graduate workers would encourage the university to participate in a fair process towards recognition, towards counting our cards, and a fair process of bargaining and negotiating a contract. So the voice of the town of Orono does matter. I think that silence from the town of Orono would certainly be heard by the University of Maine, who is on the logo of the town of Orono, especially in contrast to the various other groups that have already signaled support that are not in Orono. That's really all I have to say on the matter. I just want to leave you with those thoughts, and my email and my phone line is open if anybody wants to talk about this with me.
Thank you very much. All right, seeing no other public comment, we'll close our council committees meeting this evening. Thank you all very much.
Jeff.
Thanks.